Welcome to Community Mercenaries Spooky Edition. Today, not only are we making our own mercenary tanks, but we're making monster tank mercenaries as well, with their own abilities that go alongside them. This isn't our first time making awakened tanks either, so feel free to check out the mercenary tank playlist after this video. And without further ado, let's get started on these Community Mercenaries Awakened. There was a brilliant doctor that was quite intelligent and respected, but he was also curious and had some questions about his own second nature. Through some questionable experiments, a smaller and more evil man emerged. His darker side became manifest and wreaked havoc under another persona, but in reality, it was really just the doctor himself. This story may sound familiar to those who've heard of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and that's what this first tank is based off of. The Facade is a tier 10 heavy tank that looks quite interesting. And you might immediately notice the Rogaldorn's gun, or even the more interesting Batchat artillery chassis. The idea behind this tank is that you're usually able to tell how strong and powerful a gun may hit you for, or punish you with, by the size and caliber of the gun itself. But I wanted to shake things up a bit with this tank. The idea being that through one tank, so the Doctor, you have two sides of the tanks in terms of power. The bigger gun on the right side is your usual gun you'd expect as a 120mm. It's not the same as the Rogaldorn with 700 alpha damage, but instead it's 400 alpha damage. It's your usual gun too, with decent DPM, decent pen, and an AP and heat loadout. Overall pretty typical. But the smaller gun, that's what bites. That's the evil side of the tank. Because despite its smaller size, it only shoots HE rounds with 660 alpha damage. So they'll do some decent guaranteed damage over time, or a load of damage when penned. This combined with the regular gun makes for a powerful combo. And I know, HE spam is annoying right now, but that was kind of the point with this idea. It's the evil side of a tank, so it fits well to be annoying, I think. I did make it relatively low in comparison to the problematic HE tanks we have right now, but because it's still guaranteed damage with the HE and has a regular gun, it will still be a pain to fight. Don't worry though, this isn't a double barrel tank at least. In standard play that is. And the small gun would have a long reload, maybe even longer than the regular gun's reload. And no autoloaders on this one either like the Rogaldorn. I really do think it's just a unique idea and fits really well with the theme of the tank. The other parts of the tank are the newly added GST turret, mounted on the Batchat 155-58's chassis. Since this is a heavy tank, the hull would be up armored and weigh the tank down to a decent powder weight ratio, and feel like your average heavy tank. I don't have the stats down that I'd give this tank, but its combination of parts is really something special I think, and really commits to the theme with that gun. And of course its ability does so too, because although I said it wasn't a double barrel, I clarified in standard play. In the awakened mode it would be a double barrel, with 350 alpha damage on the regular gun, and 550 alpha damage on the smaller HE gun. So it still functions as the standard tank, but can now double fire. And that double fire is what makes the tank unique in the mode, as not only does it fire both rounds at once, but both rounds share each other's powerful characteristics. They would both become high penning HE rounds that would collectively hit for 900 alpha damage, and deal a lot of module damage too from being double HE rounds. I would want them to work like PC's double barrels though, where you have to hold the charge to double fire, and it would be a sort of long, like 5 to 6 seconds of charging up before letting go at the end of the charge, making sure that you can't just hold on forever until you find a target, and perhaps showing some visual representation of charging so that the enemies know when to run while they still have a chance. I don't think it'd be too insanely powerful, but I know it'd definitely be interesting and fun to make a double barrel tank with alternating rounds work. It's a unique challenge and idea to implement into a fun mode at the very least. An unexplainable mass of goo consumes any life form it touches. That should be enough said to instill the fear of the Blob in you. This tier 9 heavy tank is definitely an eyesore, but I thought it would be kind of funny this way. This, as you'd probably deduce by now, with what it's made of, is a super heavy tank as well. With a Malshin's turret, a Type 4 Heavy's chassis, and the gun off of the Object 7772, this was made by Aim for Ace in the Discord. But we don't have the gun he wanted in the game yet, so I slapped on the 777's gun as a substitute. He wanted a Polish tank destroyer gun, which if you don't know on PC, they have special star-shaped rounds that deal less damage the further the round travels, which makes for an interesting playstyle for sure. I like this idea for this tank, and if it were in the game I would have slapped it on here for sure. This version on screen would just play like a super heavy you'd expect. I enjoyed both the Type 4 and Malshin when I grinded them out, and with a 440 damage gun it would be decent. But with the star-shaped barrel, it would be far more interesting in standard play. But what does it do in the Awakened mode? Well, I have changed it up a little from the original suggestion, as I felt it stepped on the toes of two tanks in particular, the Bog Horror and the Wraith. So I changed it up a bit. I tried my best to keep it closest to the suggestion though. It shoots out blobs that deal damage and stick to targets. This goo will slow the target tank down the same way a wheelie tank gets slowed down with a popped tire. And the more you shoot the goo at the tank, the slower it gets. Like again, popping multiple tires on a wheeled tank. And if you get close enough to the enemy, or they make the mistake of getting close to you, you can hit your ability button on the D-pad and ooze out into the surrounding area for a period of time. This will slow tanks driving through the goo and even start eating away at them and healing you. And you want that healing because oozing out will damage yourself a bit and keep you in place until your goo comes back after the ability timer is up. This is sort of an area denial tank and one that you don't want to get too close in. The slow speed, by the way, of this area effect is the same strength as if you had shot the enemy tank for the maximum stack count of probably 3. So they're really slow. The size and time of said ability would have to be fine-tuned, but I really like this idea, and I can see it working in the mode quite nicely, especially if we did have those star-shaped rounds. The closer you get to the tank, the more damage it will do to you too. It would even counter many tanks like the Dreaddozer, Bellerophon, and Roswell with their abilities to push or pull or lift tanks around being completely negated by this tank's ability altogether. It really does stay put till it's all back together, no matter how hard the enemy may try to move you. Stay away from the Blob is all I have to say. There's a story of a mercenary horseman that fought for another nation in a revolutionary battle. But during this battle, his head was taken off by cannon fire. The Headless horseman went on to terrorize Sleepy Hollow for the rest of time. And that's who this next tank is inspired by. The Headless is a tier 6 tank destroyer, and it's definitely my favorite tank in this lineup of Awakened Mercenaries. It's just so darn good, being an M3 Lee without its turret on top, but instead a massive jack-o'-lantern. How fitting is that? It's so perfect, and I was so pleased this idea popped into my head when during my first members only livestream, Buck had said a tank looked like it was missing its head. And boom, a Headless tank was something that needed to be made. It is an M3 Lee, yes, but it has speed mode and a Dicker Max gun as a tier 6 tank destroyer. I mean, look at it. The tank is the black horse that the horseman rides on, and the turret is placed with the jack-o'-lantern head substitute of the horseman. Please tell me I'm not the only one that needs this in the game like yesterday. Of course, speed mode was given to it because it's meant to be the horse, so I call it galloping mode. In gallop mode, you lose out on camo and traverse speed, but not accuracy. So with speed mode in standard play, what does this tank do in the Awakened mode? Well, it still has speed mode there too, with the same trade-offs. What it does as its ability is it can send its head flying towards the enemy in a big HE blast of pumpkin chunks and ghostly essence. I'd give it as much splash radius as the Sturm Tiger, and high damage as well, but make it to where it cannot pen tanks whatsoever. It's pure big splash damage, and I mean really big splash damage. Even if it's incapable of penning a tank for full damage, it may still one-shot tanks with low enough HP from the splash alone. Okay, this does sound extremely OP, right? But here's the catch. When you lose your head, you don't reload it back. But instead, you have to go and find another one in a pumpkin patch somewhere on the map. And then once picked up, you still have to wait a 15-second reload before it's carved back into the jack-o'-lantern before you can fire it again. This is just so you can't sit next to one and fire them back to back. This isn't the only thing, however, when you use your head. Once it's gone, you lose your HUD too. Everything except your reticle disappears. You have no head anymore after all, so you no longer can see your HP, your consumables, cooldown times, your minimap, your allies, or even the enemy. It's pure blindness. So you really have to make use of that shot, or hope you find one quickly after use. This too was also Buck's idea, and we iterated on it till we came up with this, and I think this would just be perfect. A nimble tank with speed mode and a massive deletion button that you can only hold one of at a time and lose all awareness tools when you do use it. I really think this would become my favorite tank in the mode. If that sounds too powerful too, I did have the idea that if you're in gallop mode with no head, you also start to lose control of the tank as well. When you turn right, it may turn left, and things like that. Meaning you can't gallop your way to the next pumpkin, so not only are you at an awareness disadvantage, but a speed one too. But I felt that might be too much. But it is an option to add if it's deemed too powerful. I really want this tank in the game now, and that's what sucks most about making these vehicles. They don't exist, even if I really want them to. But there you have it for this year's Awakened community-made Mercenary tanks. Let me know which one you like best, and if you'd really like to see them in-game as much as I do. I need that Headless. Please, Wargaming, take my idea. As always, if you have your own ideas, do leave them down below or in the corresponding channel in the Discord, and who knows, they might just get picked for the next installment of Community Mercenaries. Thanks for watching, and take care.